Wasabi guys, welcome back to another Market Watch video covering the past week. Today is the 26th of May, and if you have not already, please do subscribe to the channel. It makes these videos worth it for me. I enjoy having you here for the ride. We have some big gainers. The first one up here is Sentinel Hierophants, and this is a fascinating card because it's been only a couple dollars for a while. Looking at the chart, it's going straight up vertically. This is essentially Cryptolith Rite, which is a $15 enchantment that also has not been reprinted. What it has going for it is that it is a rare from Urza Saga. It's not reserve list, if you were wondering. If it had been on the reserve list, I think it would have been a lot more expensive than a couple dollars. But we're starting to see the 90s have their impact, where it's not necessarily just about a card being on the reserve list that is gaining a bit of a premium. It's just the older artwork, it's the older card. Yes, if it goes without a reprint for a long time, it's going to help its value, but I would not be surprised if you see some of these older cards from the Urza's block start to gain momentum just for the fact that they're older and people are starting to feel a bit more nostalgic. You already know that there's a premium on sets like Arabian Nights for cards that aren't even on the reserve list. That's what I'm talking about. You have cards that are from Antiquities that are not on the reserve list, but because it's an original printing, it carries a bit more of a premium. It is from that set, it is historical for the game. And Urza Saga is, I'm telling you guys, going to have that same kind of impact within the next 5 to 10 years. You're going to see a lot of cards in the later half of the 90s Magic era go up in price because they have gained that premium. The older sets, the Antiquities, the Arabian Nights, they're still going to be incredibly expensive and gain even more value, but this is still classic Magic the Gathering. Next up, we have Worst Fears from Journey into Nyx, another card that has not been reprinted because it's very obscure. It's a very powerful card too, but for a lot of people, this is 8 mana for a one-time use out of a Mindslaver, which isn't very appealing to everyone, but because we have the new commander option Zevlor, you can then copy that for each of your other opponents. So getting 3 times the power out of a Worst Fears just by paying that extra mana and copying it with your commander, I think is definitely worth playing it, and its price is reflecting that because it has more power now, it has more potential, it's getting above $6, close to $7. And then we have Ashling the Extinguisher, not really due to anything coming out of Baldur's Gate, but because of one of the commander options from New Capenna. And I don't know exactly which one, but I'll have it on the screen. It's the one that can make it unblockable, and that's why it's going up. I think other channels have recommended it as an upgrade for that precon. Whenever Ashling the Extinguisher deals combat damage to a player, you choose target creature that player controls. They have to sacrifice that creature. That's a pretty good combat damage trigger, but it is worth pointing out, it's another card that has not been reprinted, and it's from Eventide, which is a relatively old set now. I mean, we're talking 15 years ago, something like that. To have a rare that's been without a reprint for that long, I'm not surprised at all it's going up. You look at the rest of the chart and it's very typical of a card that is okay if you're able to guarantee that it's unblockable, it's awesome, but people were not desperately trying to find a spot for Ashling. It's been a $3-4 card for a long time. Unlicensed Hearse is continuing its climb, and this is such a great card. It's now seeing legacy play. Yeah, you get to tap it to exile 2 target cards from a single graveyard. Again, I'm not an expert on Legacy, I say this all the time. I will comment on the impact of a card when I see other people talking about it. I've seen deck lists in Legacy where Unlicensed Hearse is now playing a utility role, and you don't even need haste on it because it's not a creature when it's on the battlefield unless you crew it, and its power and toughness when you do crew it is actually exceptional. And you only have to crew it for 2, so that's incredible. It's now getting close to $5. I think we talked about this last week or the week before. It is so underrated. I know it's seeing legacy play, and that's the reason why it's going up, but it's still going to be a fantastic card for a commander. Don't be distracted by the vehicle sub-theme. You don't really need that. You don't have to force the vehicle synergy. It's still a good card. Normalize playing vehicles and non-vehicle focused decks. Last gainer I want to talk about for the week is Archon of Emeria, a great stacks creature. It does see some CEDH play, but not a ton, and to be honest, I'm not really the biggest fan of CEDH, and I just don't like the environment that it creates. I don't like how everyone's kind of playing the same strategy, essentially. Oh, you're playing the same removal, the same counter spells, the same ramp spells, and you even have the same win con because they're the most competitive win cons. But you do have another strategy in CEDH, which is more about controlling those types of decks. So it's not entirely ubiquitous, but I don't know, it's just not for me. Archon of Emeria stops those decks from really going off, stops them from playing more than 1 spell each turn, and on basics they play will enter the battlefield tapped. So since Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, it's actually been climbing pretty aggressively. To go from $1 to $3, that's a decent percentage gain. Now let's talk about some losers, and I don't typically do this because the reserve list has had the trend over the past couple years. Whenever I talk about the market, it's a no-brainer that your reserve list cards are going to go up, but acknowledging that we're in a recession, I had some people comment in my video about Rudy saying that when are we going to notice this impact on the reserve list, because so far, Commander Void, the cards have just been going up. Well, now you're about to see it, and you're going to see it with cards that are not so much played as they are collected. And Bazaar of Baghdad's a great example of this. Arabian Nights, and condition does matter. I don't want people to think, oh my god, I can get Bazaar of Baghdad half off. As you can see, the average versus the market, people are buying this for under $2,000. A lot of that is heavily played, moderately played, and even damaged. You need to understand that the market for older cards from Arabian Nights is totally different. A lot of older cards, Alpha, Beta, Unlimited, you can get away with heavily played cards, and you're still going to get a lot of money. Unlike if you were to sell a heavily played card from Streets of New Capenna, who wants that? They're not even that valuable. If you look at this chart too, it's very typical of the data that you see. This is MTG Stocks, by the way. It's very typical of TCGplayer.com sales for cards like Bazaar of Baghdad, so I don't know if this is the best representation of how the market is treating Bazaar of Baghdad, but as you can see, it peaks, it plateaus, and it's coming down from where it had previously plateaued for the past month. Confirming these numbers, you are going to see a lot of people getting moderately played Bazaar of Baghdads for around $2,000, definitely under $3,000. So the average listing price of $4,000, again, condition does matter. If you can get a high quality Bazaar of Baghdad, you can get away with asking for an extra $1,000 or $2,000. But this is what we were talking about with the recession, people's spending habits, and if we're just talking about what the average Commander player, the average Magic the Gathering player needs, it's not a trophy item. And this is Bazaar of Baghdad. It's a trophy item. It's one of the best cards ever made. You're going to want to hold on to it because you know in 10 years it's going to go right back up and probably gain even twice as much. But it is worth noting that cards like these that don't see a ton of play, that don't even see that much market activity, are going to see a decrease in price, because if you're going on TCGplayer.com, do you want something like this that's a couple $1,000s being handled by your post office? Probably not, and if you have to, you're not going to feel totally comfortable with it. Next up, we have another reserve list card in Hezezan Tamar. This is more relevant for Commander because I do see some Hezezan Tamar Commander decks, and its trajectory is somewhat similar, although I will say the value was starting to climb back in 2018, unlike with Bazaar of Baghdad, which has always been a more expensive card. Again, this does tie back into what I was saying about Urza Saga. There was a time where a lot of these cards and legends were relatively affordable. A lot of Arabian Nights cards were more iconic, they stood out more, so they've always been a bit more expensive. But then you started to notice the premium for all of these legends cards, and over the past year or so, it's shot up to $400. Now, of course, you see the market average of $262. It's the same situation. Are you as likely to spend at least a couple $100s on a Commander option? Or are you just going to spend it on a collectible that's going to sit in your collection? Probably in some type of top loader, or even graded. Probably not during this economy. You're going to spend maybe $50 to $100 building a budget deck, like I think most people are. That being said, I am only commenting on the average person's spending habits. What you should be doing is collecting more of these. If you can get a Bazaar of Baghdad for cheap, if it's within your price range, go for it. If you can get a Hezezan Tamar right now, as it's going down, go for it. Rudy made another good video where he was talking about people trying to predict the bottom of the market. Prices are going to keep going down, so I just gotta wait until it reaches the absolute bottom, which is nonsensical because no one knows when exactly the bottom is. And even the people who say just wait for it to go up, and then there you go. There's the bottom. The way the market works is that it goes up and it goes down every day. So you're not going to know. You can't know. You can only really be lucky enough to get as close to the bottom as you possibly can. The next card is Devoted Druid, which, as you can see, over the past month or two, we've talked about the growth of Devoted Druid in the market, getting close to $10, but now our girl is down to $3. Mayday, Mayday. No, it's still a good card, still belongs in a lot of Commander decks, and that's what I prioritize when I talk about cards that are this cheap. Make sure that you can at least get playability out of them. Don't just buy a card because you're speculating. Buying a card because you know it's good right now, it could fit into a ton of decks, is also great. There is room for speculation in the market. If you know what you're doing, sometimes you get it right. But I wouldn't feel bad holding on to a bunch of Devoted Druids. She's always going to be a good card for a Commander and a lot of other formats. And lastly, the last loser of the week is Niv Mizzet Parun, which hasn't really been a major loser. It's just under $4 again. This is such a good Commander option. I love this Niv Mizzet probably more than all of the other ones, maybe with the exception exception of Niv-Mizzet Reborn, but because it gives you exactly what you want out of a 6-mana commander, where all of the mana you have to spend is inconvenient in that color. Like, it's not just generic mana, you have to spend 3 blue and 3 red. He's at least uncounterable, and he has a pretty kick-ass ability similar to the other Niv-Mizzets, but I love how you're able to maximize your card draw. I predict it's going to do more of a zigzag, if not trend downward closer to the $2 mark. So anyway, let me know what you think about the market this week. Let me know what you think about reserve list cards and the trend. Do you think we're going to see more of these cards like Bazaar Baghdad go down? We might see Library of Alexandria next, we might see the Tabernacle next. We could see a lack of interest in buying a lot of those cards, and that could drive the price down to where you and I can snatch them up. Commander Void here with the Market Watch. I will see you all next week.